Hello and welcome to Building Tomorrow's Insurer, the podcast where we explore forces shaping the future of insurance. I'm your host, Nigel Fellowes-Freeman, and today we are tackling a very important topic, one that I think is becoming almost impossible to ignore, and that is cyber risk. Joining me is none other than Karen Stevens. She's the co-founder and CEO of BCyber. I am super excited to have her here. She is a wealth of knowledge, and so we are in for an absolute treat today. Karen has, she's got over 20 years of experience in financial services more broadly, and she now very much leads a team dedicated to helping SMEs strengthen their cybersecurity posture and governance. I know it's something all on our lips that we're all going to sleep worrying about every night, and so these cyber threats are evolving very quickly, and Karen is very much on a mission to make risk mitigation one core part of a business strategy versus maybe something you think out after it's happened. So, Karen, thank you so much for joining us today. I could not be more excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you for your lovely introduction. So hopefully we finish this with a couple of positive things rather than just the negative, which is what poor old cyber gets all the time.
Sure does, but it's very important. I think that's the key here. And Karen, I think maybe I touched there on your experience in being kind of within financial services for a long time, and I'm sure that's given you a really good, broad depth of knowledge to do what you do now. But I think it's always good to start at the beginning. So would you mind just giving us maybe an overview of how you kind of got to where you are today?
Okay. So quite rightly, actually I had a look at the dates, and I think it's over 25 years, so apologies for that. So a bit of grey coming through. But I worked in a variety of roles in financial services, typically with the SME. So everything from private bank, asset management, corporate superannuation, and obviously the advice world. So within each of those, I was sort of on the business consulting arm, so looking at governance, risk and compliance. And then a couple of years ago, just prior to lockdown one, because I have fabulous timing, my business partner, who I met when I was on the graduate program, so a long time ago, said, this cyber thing's, heating up. What about it? And I thought, well, I've done a little bit of working actually as a staff member of SMEs, and I thought I'd give it a whirl, because cyber is just another risk. It's not a tech thing. I don't expect you to code anything. And sort of, it was interesting because what I'm finding is that, everyone thinks it's a tech thing. My tech bloke, my tech gal, my tech person, whatever they are, they're looking after my cyber. And I'm sitting there going, are they? Are they really? And that's sort of one of the big things that I found. The other really big thing is when you move from financial services where you have a deep knowledge of, be it asset management or AFSL land, with your cars and auth reps and all the rest of it, moving into cyber, there are a number of terms that are exactly the same. So when a tech person says ATO, they're talking about account takeovers, whereas as an SME in financial services, I'm thinking tax offers. Both are horrible.
Both
in their own ways.
Both you don't want to experience too often.
No. If anyone from the ATO is looking at this, we love you.
Yeah,
but both are scary for different reasons. Okay. And I found that out the hard way because when you move industries especially, what happens is, you try to get your feet, so you read lots, you do lots of courses and all the rest of it. And I was invited to an asset management meeting probably about a month into my transfer. And I thought, I'm going to go to a meeting where I actually understand what you're talking about. And I got there and, it wasn't about, equities or derivatives or anything. It was about hardware and software. And that's when it clicked to me going, right, we have to be really careful when we speak to an SME to make sure. And that's one of the things we've noticed with SMEs, when they're filling out a cyber insurance form. The question might be innocuous. Do you have a policy? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, Karen, can I go a little bit into that? Because I think that's a really important point. And lots of SMEs that I talk to see cybersecurity as like an IT problem.
No.
And rather than seeing it as like a purely business risk, and that's very much a mindset kind of shift that's maybe required. Can you kind of touch on that? I think is that something that you see as well? I think it's this real fundamental important understanding.
100%. So we do obviously risk management within the SME world and sort of the M of the SME world. And you can tell someone cyber isn't just tech. Cyber isn't just tech. And they'll go, and then go on their merry way and go, that woman was on drugs. Like she's, you know. So what we find is, you know, when you do an assessment, for example, okay, you actually ask them questions that are both quasi-technical. So you don't expect the coding question, but do you have certain things in place? But you also start asking them questions like, you know, do you have policies? And I don't mean configuration. I mean written, thou shalt not, whatever it happens to be, you know, email policy. If I say email policy to a tech head, they go, oh, right, so that's DKIM, SPF, DMARC, and probably a bit of DLP thrown in. Acronyms that no one understands, but basically they will harden your email security. That's all you really need to understand. But I might actually mean the thou shalt not use work email for any other purposes other than work. This includes as a login identifier for such social media as, but not limited to, LinkedIn. It means not using it to book your holidays on booking.com or Airbnb or Luxurious or whatever it happens. I don't care. You insert your own. Okay, but being very clear. And if it's in writing, there is no plausible deniability. And as an SME, you need that. You need to educate your staff about your expectations. You need to have it in writing so you both understand. And you need to revisit that on at least, if not more, an annual basis. There's an interesting case, Kylie Smith v. Bank of Queensland from a couple of years back. And that was where she was a branch manager. And long story short, she pressed on something she ought not to. Things turned pear-shaped. She lost her job. Okay, this is the Reader's Digest version. You can Google it as much as, you know, the next person. But when she took them for unfair dismissal, it was found partly in her favour because of the lack of education, the lack of, you know, plausible deniability. So, you know, if you have those things in place, you are strengthening your security, but everyone is coming up. And that's not even looking at what are you doing for your clients. Okay, so you are only as strong as your weakest link. Yeah. Okay, so you can pay, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the best in the West software, but it has to be 100% perfect 100% of the time. Okay, and no software is that good. You only need one Karen from accounts, and I really wish this was not a real example, but there was a Karen and there was the accounts team. She literally pressed on a button and life as that particular SME knew it changed significantly. And she was tired, that's all it was. It was end of financial year, she was tired.
And Karen, just kind of pulling on this thread just a little bit more, and around the education piece, and so around how important education and process and policy is in this world. Age can be a thing here, and I'm meaning, I would say I'm more educated than my parents are, but I'm sure I'm not going to be as well educated as some 20-year-olds are in terms of a knowledge of everything. And so age cannot be a limit to learning what you need to do. And so how should SMEs think about this around equipping their teams to have the knowledge to be able to properly assess cyber risk?
Yeah. So with that, a couple of things. You are perfectly correct. And I will do a shameless plug now. I hope that's allowed. If you dive onto the BCyber website, into the Watch and Learn, I write a regular column for a cyber magazine, but in plain English, none of this fancy stuff. Mm-hmm. And it goes into this in gory detail and provides hints. But if you think about the SMEs, just in financial services, okay, they will have a load of retiree clients, okay? So if your weakest link you think is your retiree client, when you do your biannual review or annual review, whatever, you really need to bring up the cybersecurity piece with them, okay? Nothing too technical, just say, you know, we have a big focus on cybersecurity here. One thing that we insist our staff do is have good, strong passwords. Job done. And if they go, what's a good, strong password? then if you're halfway decent, you would have gone in and got an infographic or made up one yourself and gone, do these 3 things. Okay? At the other end of the spectrum, you've got the kids coming through. And look, quite rightly, those kids are digital natives. But with great knowledge comes great responsibility. And sometimes the shortcuts are truly frightening. You know, they don't understand the impact of oversharing on social media. There's a really lovely example, and you can use it for both your older people and your younger people. And I'll let you Google his name. His name's Jeremy Hammond. He was one of the FBI's 10 most wanted felons at one point, big cybercrime, and he would taunt them. And they just monitored his socials. They knew that he loved Star Wars because he'd go to those, what are they called, Comic-Cons? You know, when you dress up as Star Wars character. He would go. His favourite character was Chewbacca. He loved cats. And his cat's name was Chewie. And one day, so the story goes, someone in the FBI went, oh, how funny would it be if his password was Chewie123? Anyway, so they got him. So that's a really nice live example. For your staff, there is no excuse. It doesn't matter if Karen from accounts is 60. If she's logging in to your work environment, he, she, it needs to adhere to whatever policies you have in place. Now, online training is great, big fan, but it's not enough. Okay? I'm not a huge fan of the phishing exercises because I think it leads to complacency, but that's just a personal opinion. What I think works really well is a bit of online training, you know, 1 or 2 videos with tests a month, but actually get someone in, be it, you know, someone like me or whoever, who can speak in plain English that they understand. This is why we are having a focus on, just once again, picking on passwords. And give them some live examples, because if your staff can take what they learn at work and also do that at home, that's a really good thing for our society, okay? Yeah. But it's also a good thing for your business. Because if Karen from accounts logs in at home using, for example, the same Wi-Fi network as, I don't know, Disney Plus or Netflix or insert whatever name, how secure is that?
Not very secure. Is there any data around it? Is there any data around the growth of cybercrime or like cost to businesses or anything like that? Is there any kind of data?
There's lots. It just sort of depends on what you believe.
The
new kid on the block, I guess you'd call it, is ransomware-as-a-service. It's not that new. It started being big in lockdown 1. So for those of you who are familiar with financial services, think of it as a white labeling service. Okay, so you have BDMs. They call them something different, but basically that's what they are. As a client, I purchase it and then I use this ransomware as a service. And they have commission splits.
Wow.
60-40 if you're not very good, 70-30 if you're pretty good. As a cost to the world, it is the 3rd largest economy if you use GDP as a comparator. Wow. Beaten only by the US and China. Okay? And in recent times, the one that's concerning me the most at the moment, to be honest, which is my grey hair moment, is the whole cloning of the voice. It was relatively easy to pick up in the past. The thing for Australians, and this is, lucky us, our accent is actually pretty hard to clone.
Is it? I didn't know that.
It is harder to clone than the average bear, so to speak, yeah. But it's not something you can't do with a bit of fun, like with a bit of work. We were asked to clone one of our clients' head of risk a little while ago, and they were presenting at a conference. And so we cloned a video, we matched up the voice, it was all great, and they thought they'd done a great presentation, and I'm sure they did. However, a number of people came back to them afterwards and said, I didn't know that you spoke fluent Hindi and German. She doesn't. But anyway, so that shows you how good it is. And then when was it? I think it was like last year or thereabouts, there was a Hong Kong financial services group and they lost, I think it was like 200,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is what, 200 million, Hong Kong dollars, 25 million US, something like that. And the person that paid it out did so in tranches and did so after having a meeting like this.
Yeah, I saw this. I remember seeing this.
Cloned people. Yeah. So what they did is they took videos like this, and then they cloned the voice so that it matched the mouth pretty closely, but it was saying contemporaneous things.
Yeah. So it's really. I'd love to kind of spend a little bit of time here because we're doing a bunch of work in our sales and marketing at the moment, and podcasts.
Yep.
And so I've been playing with some of the services, uploading a bunch of our content into these systems, and then showing it to my team, and the team can have a conversation with it. And apart from some slight oddities, it's hard to tell it's not me. It has my intonation, it has my pauses, it has the same kind of rhythm of my speech. Yeah. And if you imagine that we are still so early in this, in voice, it's one thing that we're using it to think about how we use it outwardly in terms of to find new business and create new content and all those kind of things. But the opposite is absolutely true, which is how is it going to be used against us or against us as individuals? And so is there anything happening within the cyber risk protection world to go like, what do we do about this? Is there? Yeah. Or not yet? Is it we just kind of at the moment we're like, we just need to try and work it out?
Look, it's to paraphrase Donald Rumsfeld, it's a known unknown. Mm-hmm. It's a known look. It's a known problem. Mm-hmm. We know that it's happening. You will notice, especially in financial services, there were some groups who shall remain nameless, who were using voice as one of the identifiers. They stopped doing that a little while back now, and that was one of the big guys, and that was for this particular reason. People are trying. And we know we need it, but at this point there is no nirvana which says if you put this on, it's going to tell you that it's a fake person. Yeah. The best we have at the moment is you really need to know your clients. If you're doing something like this, and this is like a general, not foolproof, but best we've got at the moment. If the clone, for example, isn't using their hands and all that sort of stuff, then, a little bit suspect, especially because I use my hands a lot. So when you clone, you tend to clone from a front on. So you've got to get them to turn their heads, okay? Won't always work, but it is something. The other one, which is not a popular one, but I find works quite nicely, Australians tend to be a little bit more sarcastic than most.
Yeah.
So you'll put something a bit sarky in, and then if whoever it is you're speaking to doesn't snigger along with you, there's actually a podcast out there I was listening to. I wish I could remember the name of it. I was on the way to drop off. It was on the ABC, and it's basically a couple of AIs, or sort of deepfakes, and they interview real people. And you could tell that they were deepfakes only because the real person in that instance made some snide comment about their hair. Like, it was just totally innocuous. And he killed himself laughing. And the two deepfakes were going, oh, yes, very funny.
Yeah, okay. So just that some of those nuances are still on there.
It is. Yeah.
And from a policy perspective, so if we kind of put this on this head and go, okay, if we take out a cyber policy, what kind of I don't know, maybe this isn't quite your jam, but maybe you might have some thoughts on it, which is are there clauses and inclusions around this type of kind of deep fake and that kind of thing within our general cyber clauses? Is it something that's...
Look, I haven't seen anything, but I'm not a broker.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So that's really a broking or an insurer question.
Type question, yeah.
Yeah, because what you'll find, and it's quite interesting, because cyber insurance is relatively new. So it's where probably directors and officers, or D&O, was maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago. Relatively new. When something is relatively new, as you would know, you sort of ratchet up the premiums, tighten up the T's and C's because you don't know what you're dealing with and you don't want to dirty the pool. Okay. Then we had the perfect storm in that we're in lockdown, lots of cyber attacks, you know, it was all a bit pot-like, a bit pear-shaped. So the pools were not reflective of necessarily reality.
Yep.
We're starting to see a settling of those, and I'm starting to get anecdotal evidence from both brokers and end users, in short, where they're finding that the T's and C's, while they're remaining, the premiums are coming down slightly, but that's not a promise. That's just a bit of, you know, general gossip from the industry. Yeah, look, yeah. It's, but the other thing you need to remember, and this comes back to one of your earlier comments about, you know, finding out that cyber isn't tech when you've had a bit of an incident. What we have found is people don't understand what they're buying with their cyber insurance, which truly horrifies me. You've got people out there that, and I'm talking about financial services because that's where we tend to play. So all financial services groups will have PI. Okay, there are some out there that think getting an addendum for cyber to their PI is all that they need. Once again, I'm not a broker, but the answer is no, it's not. If you get cyber insurance, you need to understand what you're buying. You need to understand what you are covered for, what you are not covered for, what you need to do in if a breach occurs, who you need to call, and you need to have that overlaid with your incident response plan, your continuity plan, and your contingency plan. If you don't have the latter two, I always say to my guys, I get it, you're a small business, shove as much as you can in the incident response plan. It's substance over form. I don't care whether it should be there or not. As long as you've got something you can hold on when things go pear-shaped, you know, I'm okay. But if your policy says in the instance you have a breach, the first thing you need to do is call me or call the insurer or the representative or whatever it is. And if you don't, then problems may occur. So that's why your incident response needs to have a call tree in it. Who do I call first? Okay, and that will vary depending on whether you're a corporate authorised representative or an authorised representative or an AFSL. Okay, so you have, in financial services, you have a number of gods. You have those ones, but you also have your insurer. So you need to make sure that they work together, because if you're authorised, so if you're a car or an R by an AFSL, your AFSL will want you to call them immediately. Your insurer may, I don't know, depending on your insurance plan, may want you to call them immediately. Your tech thing, person, whatever, may want you to call them immediately. Who do you call? It depends.
And when you say it depends, is, so if we try and kind of give a, this is not giving any cyber advice to those folks out there, you need to do your own work and make sure that you pull together your own processes. Is there like a standard approach for anyone listening to go like, or a place to go, or is there a general approach that a small business should take?
If you're an authorised representative or a corporate authorised representative, straight through to the AFSL. Okay, your AFSL will generally want to know, but you need to have someone in your team calling your insurer at the same time. Calling your tech person is very important. I fully acknowledge that. However, if by calling them you have voided or changed what you are covered for, that is not what you want, because there are some insurers out there that have their own triage team. Okay, so as soon as they know that, hey, I think I've got a bit of a breach, they go, right, okay, and they activate their triage team. Okay, if you already have your tech bloke in there or whatever it happens to be in there, you don't know what they're doing. You know, and coming back to your question from about 2 minutes ago, the other thing in financial services that you can do that is not anything related to techie stuff, good policies and procedures. Okay, if you have a client who is investing money or withdrawing money, make sure you have non-negotiable, this is what we do, this is how we do it. So an example might be if you have, and this is unfortunately a real life example, if you have a SMSF client, Okay, you've got two trustees. One trustee might be climbing in, I don't know, let's call it Patagonia. And they send you a message, hi, I need to withdraw 30 grand, I'm in Patagonia, I'm not going to have reception, I can't get in contact, just do it. And your process is to double check with the other trustee. Sounds like them, feels like them. And the other trustee goes, oh yeah, seems probable. Do you activate it or do you not? In the instance I'm thinking of, they activated it, and unfortunately it wasn't the person in Patagonia.
Like a rumba.
Yeah. So you really have to be very strict. And it's a bit like, those adverts you see on like SBS at the moment, if you're not sure, call. You do that with your clients. I know it feels like you're going back to the future because, back in, early 2000s, like I used to call the client and confirm. Do it now.
Now. And when we're thinking about that, let's just follow that on. Actually, the policies themselves and the coverage. And I think I was doing some research before, and I think there was a case between Inchcape versus Chubb. Is that right?
Yes.
There was some complexities around what gaps exist in the cyber policies today. Often folks don't really realise until it's too late. Could you touch on that? I think the reason I asked the question was this is just a really interesting case for people to try and absorb some information and understand what is and what isn't covered and where the gaps are.
Yeah. And look, and that comes back to, as I said earlier, understanding what you're covered for and what you are not covered for.
Yep.
Okay. Generally speaking, an insurance policy will take you back to where you were. Not going to make it better, not going to make it worse, but it might not cover, for example, replacement of hardware, because that could be construed as an improvement. Because if you had a laptop that did these things and then you bought one that did these things, that's an improvement. The insurance is not going to pay for an improvement. They're taking you back to where you were. And that's a part of the problem. Okay. And that was sort of one of the things with Inchcape. They didn't quite understand what they bought. And while I have no internal knowledge, I would hazard a guess that perhaps when they bought off the broker, they made the assumption that the broker understood their business a little bit more fully than they did. Okay. We had a situation with one of the big AFSLs a little while back now, and we were doing some work with them and it was outside scope, and they were going, we're going to get cyber insurance. And I went, yeah, that's great. Do you need help? No, we're good. And I went, okay, cool. We're using one of the biggest brokers. I'm happy for you. And then I got a call probably 3 months in from this particular group. They're going, something doesn't feel right. And I went, okay, if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. What's the problem? I don't know. Can you have a quick squeeze? And I went, I want to be very clear. I'm not offering you advice. I'm not a broker. I just want to be very clear. And they're going, yeah, that's fine. So they sent me through the application form. I literally opened up the application form and went, yeah, you've got the wrong application form. And they're going, how do you know? And I said, see question 3? And they went, yeah. And I went, read it out loud. And they went, oh, that's not us. And I went, no, it's not. Oh. So that indicated that the broker, even though they had a long-term relationship with this group, didn't understand what an AFSL was. Okay? And if you are a corporate authorised rep or an authorised rep, and the licensing depends on the AFSLs and how they do it, but you'll be either one or the other. It'll be very rare to be just a rep because you'll be a staff member. But your broker needs to understand where the liabilities lie because it's quite different. Okay? Financial services is complex if you don't, or if you haven't worked inside it. It's just a lot of acronyms. Okay? And, you have, financial services has many people to keep happy. Okay? They've got a variety of regulators. They've got a variety of, laws. Everything from the Corps Act to the Privacy Act, you name it, it's there. So you have many things to juggle. Okay, sometimes your broker, and this is not trying to diss brokers because they've got their own issues, sometimes they're not fully across what you need because they're just more of a general broker without a particular focus on a particular industry. we've been caught into a variety of industries, you know, legal, engineering, whatnot. And it doesn't matter where we go. The lack of understanding of what you are actually covered for is quite strong. The other thing which is a little bit challenging is that when you get an application form, and this is more Mr. Insurer, Ms. Insurer, do better, they are quite long, a bit scary, and when you give it to an SME, they go, "Hooly dooly, Batman," and they give it to their tech guy. As we've been saying, it's not always about tech. So a question that an insurer may ask might look like tech, might feel like tech, but from an insurance point of view, you're not tech. It's the written policies, the thou shalt ABC policies. Okay? And I think that the insurers, you know, with the Intercape, I think they can do better, making it very plain what you are and are not covered for. It's a bit like are you covered for, what's the war clause, you know? Is it actually an active war? Is it an undeclared war? What sort of war? Is it just an incursion? You know, you really do need to get your head around it. And you need to get your head around it once, you know, you're in the negotiations. It's harder if you've had a breach and then you try to get your head around it. Yeah. Okay? Because when you're doing the application form, and they're not doing this to any great degree at the moment, I'm just sort of thinking, I've seen a little bit of it. Do you have this? Yes, I do. Well done. But you as an SME need to go, well, I've got ABC, XYZ, and I can prove it. You know, do you back up daily and you go to your tech team or external guy and they go, of course you do. And you go, great, and tick yes. No. What you need to do is go, I am superbly happy, prove it.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time before the insurers will expect you to be able to prove it.
Ask that information. If we go put our shoe on the insurer foot,
yep.
And as we've spoken about, cyber threats are obviously evolving very, very quickly,
yep.
And probably quicker than. We know very well how quickly risk models are updated in lots of the legacy systems today. So even if there was a desire to update some of those risk models, the actual ability to keep up with them is very small, unless they're using Kanopi, of course. But how should insurers be rethinking this approach to underwriting cyber risk? Like, how should they be thinking about it?
I'd like to see them. This is like a quite left field, so I refuse to accept any hate mail from insurers. I'd like to see a little bit more proactiveness. Okay, so picking on the good old application form. Be very clear about what your expectations are as an insurer. If you expect the written policies, thou shalt, so on and so forth, be very clear and say business policies written whatever it is. If it is a configuration, then be very clear that I want to know what your configurations are for whatever it happens to be. So be very clear. The other thing, I think, insurers tend to have customers, not clients or advocates. And I'd like to see them move towards the client advocate stage. To do that, I think if they offered things to their current customer base, their SME customer base. So an example might be, virtual presentations, not unlike this, but about a particular topic, I'm just picking on, passwords because it's a nice, easy thing. Everyone understands. Well, everyone should understand them. Okay. I'll just be very clear. Things that you can actually take them on the journey with you. Okay. I think that would be really nice. At the claim end, what I would, and I don't know how they would do this, to be honest, but what I would like to see is for them to acknowledge that with the SMEs, they're trying so hard. Like they're not out there trying to press every button known to mankind so some random ransomware will come in and infect them. It's not what they have in their mind. When it happens, all that goes around in their head, and I see this when we do remediations, is I'm a bad person, I've let my clients down, I've let my staff down, I've let my family down, I'm losing everything, I'm a bad person, and it just goes in this endless cycle. But the insurer is very cut and dry. Here's your check. Go with God. If they took that into account and sort of took a more humanistic approach, are you okay? Okay? One of the things that we're very clear about is that when we do remediations, and we don't do a lot because it's not our main gig, we do it as favours. So we did one as a favour to one of our very large clients, and the particular client I'm thinking of is now a client of ours, which is lovely, and we really appreciate that. And I was talking to them probably 6 months after we fixed it up, and we were working on hardening their security and doing a variety of things. And they said, I just want to tell you something. And I went, oh yeah. And they went, I've been held up at gunpoint in 3 continents. And I went, okay, you win the scariest life. And they said, I have never been so scared and so worried as when we had that breach. And the fact that you were taking virtual walks with me on the beach at 2 a.m, yes, it is a true story. He said, it helped. And I did nothing special. All I did was listen. I'm not saying that the poor old insurer needs to be on 24-hour call, but just taking a little bit of time. And I know that what I'm suggesting is problematic because you have the broker that sits in between, and I fully acknowledge that. But something can be done that's better. Yeah. SMEs make up a huge portion of the Australian businesses, bigger portion than the big guys. I think it's like in the 90s I last saw the numbers for. And, we're, as I said to you a little earlier ago, we are only as strong as our weakest link. Australia is a great source for cyber criminals. Typically the 35 to 45-year-olds. Well done, team. We're a favoured attack area because we are so trusting. Okay? So odds are, if you're not breached now, or, it's going to happen one day.
Some point.
It would be nice to think that the insurers have your back with more than just a check. But I don't know how they would deliver it. And I fully acknowledge that it is problematic, but it would be nice to see, because your customers wouldn't be customers. They would be clients and they would be advocates.
It's hard, isn't it? Think about those things at scale. Karen, I could talk to you all day, literally all day, actually. The amount of questions in my mind. We might have to do another one of these, Karen, so I've got a lot to ask you. But we've spoken so much today already about how cyber is evolving so quickly. And so I'm sure what the world looks like in 12 months will be different to what the world looks like in 5 years' time. But I'd love you to get the crystal ball and start predicting for me. What do you think are going to be the biggest shifts in cyber risk mitigation and insurance in the next 5 years?
I really hope, I think it's probably a vain hope, but I really hope that people understand that cyber risk is a risk. It's not a tech problem. It's an everyone problem. I don't care whether you're the mail person or the director. It's an everyone problem. I think that's one of the things. I would like to think that assessments or audits, and I fully acknowledge audits are very expensive, very time intensive, and most SMEs won't do it, but assessments at least. Know your unknowns. I have yet to do an assessment, and this, I don't know whether it says anything about me. Anyway, so I've yet to do an assessment where I go to a client and I say, all right, so how many users do you have? And they go, oh, I've got 10. And they're talking about butts on seats. I'm not talking about butts on seats. I'm talking about accesses. So if you have a finance at or a help me at, or that's also a user. You need to understand what you have. What I would like to see is that people treat their websites as something that needs respect and care, not as brochureware. With that brochureware, I can actually come in and do so many exciting things. I would never do that. Like, that's not my gig. I don't break into things. But your website is the access to your business, and people don't realise that. So I'd like to think that they do that. I'd like to see that awareness is not just for those who are employed, but for the clients and for the families, and, you know, more of a, you know, thing. What else? One more fantasy. I'd like people to understand their phones. Fun fact, which will hopefully be it's not a good surprise, but it's a surprise. So if you have a 2024 smartphone, okay, it has 1 million times more computing power than the Apollo 11 guidance system. Okay, so a little bit more perspective. You know how on your phone you've got a calculator? Your calculator app can run the entire Apollo 11 mission thousands of times simultaneously. Feel free to Google Apollo 11 space website.
Love it.
Your phones are super important. Okay. Actually, just one more if I can.
Sure, you
Social
got it.
media.
Go for it. No,
Yeah, social
We're
media.
strapped in.
Yeah, social media. Share nothing. I know I sound like a Luddite, and I cannot emphasize enough that social media needs to be treated with kid gloves. You know, I work in cyber risk. My family is sick of me saying, be careful what you share. No, you cannot have a mobile phone. No, you cannot have Instagram, so on and so forth. I mean, earlier this year, and you may have seen it on LinkedIn, there were all these people going, oh, little Johnny has just started ABC school, and there's a picture of Johnny outside the school. From that one photo, I know that that particular person has a Johnny. He's probably 6 because he's starting kindy. I know where the school is. I know the hours of the school. You're sharing way too much. Stop sharing.
Yeah.
Trust nobody, verify everything.
I think that is a wonderful place to start. I think that may even be the title of the podcast. Trust nobody. What does it say again? Trust nobody.
Trust nobody, verify everything.
Verify everything. Trust nobody, verify everything. Karen, this has been so good. Thank you so much for the conversation today. It's so apparent that you are so deep in this space, and it must be an exciting day today because everything is changing so quickly. But I really appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your day to talk with us, to share some of your knowledge, and maybe we can catch up in 12 months' time and look back over the last 12 months and see how the world's changed. I think it'll be a little bit different.
Hopefully for the better. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the invite.
Absolute pleasure. Well, thank you, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed the episode today. I know that I did. If you want to jump on and see Karen and I's faces, please jump onto the video version. It's over on YouTube, and the link will be in the description below. And as always, if you want to hear more from industry leaders who are pushing the boundaries of insurance, please do check out our other episodes of our podcast series, Building Tomorrow's Insurers. And for more content, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter. Please don't share any pictures of your family on LinkedIn. And links will be in the description below. Karen, thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your year.